without the profiles, these documents wouldn't really occur. Some of the profiles are a little sketchier than others at the time that we developed them. For example, the kitchen helper and food counter attendant. Food counter attendant, by the way, is Tim Hortons or working a grocery store at a deli. It didn't have its own profile, so we had to kind of work with cooks and waiters and waitresses and try and figure out, and work with the knock codes to try and figure out what it would be. Now there actually is one, so it's helpful. But the profiles gave us a national perspective for a start, so that the documents were not just useful here in Ontario, and they also helped us to see the most important essential skills for that job. So this is the web page leading into the profiles. On each of your desks, you also have a job profile. It's not applicable to anything except one of the curriculum that we've done. So you can kind of look at that and see where the most important skills show up. We also asked you to survey the people at your table and find out what they felt were the most important skills for the jobs. So I'm just going to ask at each of the tables. Who has the profile for truck drivers? 7411 is the number. So which table has one of those? It's the blue printed document. There's only one per table. So do you have one for, not the manual, it's, I don't know if I have mine up here. That's right, it looks like this. It's got a Government of Canada flag on it. So someone will have, one of the tables will have a truck driver one. Okay, what were the most important essential skills for a truck driver?
Document use, problem solving, working with others, computer use, continuous learning.
Quite a few. So document use, problem solving, working with others, computer use, continuous learning. How many of you, as you went and did your surveys around the table, came up with similar surveying? So not too many. So you can see that if we hadn't used the profile, because the profile has actually interviewed the employers and the employees, so they have actually found out what are the most important skills for that job. Whereas if we had just gone from our own knowledge, I know, actually as I helped write the truck driver, I know I would never have thought of computer use as being a top thing, but they're all using computers in their trucks now. So being as I'm not a truck driver, I wouldn't have known that. So if we look at another one, at retail, 6421, does anyone have salesperson or retail service on? Okay, and what were the most important essential skills for that? It's hard to read sometimes. It'll be on the first page in slightly bolder print, it should say, or in blue print. It'll say the most important essential skills. Reading text. Document use. Writing. Numeracy. And oral communication. And the thinking skills. Okay, as you did your surveying at the tables, did you come up with those answers? Somewhat. Okay. Do we want to do more? Are you curious to see what the others were? Okay. The next one is the landscaping and grounds maintenance, which is called other laborers. 8612. Is it over on this table maybe? Yours. Okay. Reading text. Oral communication, and problem solving. How did that come up for the landscaping group? We seem to have a lot of surprises. So the pre-PSW, or healthcare, falls under two categories, 3413 and 6471. So there may be two of them out there. There could be empty tables too. Yeah, what did you have? And what were the most important essential skills? Oral communication and problem solving. Okay.
And we had 3413, here's today's order needs patient services. And the most important essential skills were document use and oral communication.
Document use and oral communication. So you get an idea that maybe just our own judgment of what we think the learners might need to know isn't necessarily right, that you should refer to the profiles.
I've used these to create curriculum for a essential skills program for custodians with a custodian who also, but one thing we noticed under oral communication, I don't believe it necessarily lists listening. So we added listening as a component of oral communication, but because we thought that was pretty important.
It is a component of oral communication, but they may not have found tasks with the people they interviewed so much. But it is part of it, you're right. Okay. So the last piece of looking at the occupational profiles was looking at the complexity levels and the frequency and examples of the tasks. So in the profiles, if you notice, if you're not familiar with them, they do have tasks. They have chevrons to show how often the tasks are used, and they have levels that show the complexity level of both the common tasks and the most difficult tasks. And now for something completely different. Okay? I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put some words up on the board, and I want you to state the, I want you to read out the color, the word, and then say the color of the font. Okay? Read the word, and then say the font color. Have you all got that? Okay, so this is not too hard. Red and red, okay? I think you get the idea. Some of you switched the order that you said them in, saying the color of the font before you read the word. Some of you had trouble. There's automatic pauses. Obviously, here, we can all read, I hope, and we all know our colors. But when we put the two things together and require us to do more than one thing at a time, it becomes much more difficult. So this is the definition of complexity in the essential skills. It's not your skill level, it's your ability to use it in a task. And all the tasks, or most tasks, have complications involved. So to discuss the complexity levels just a bit more, because that's very important when we're doing the profiles. As we've just seen, the complexity ratings indicate the level of difficulty of the tasks related to that skill. There are 5 levels of complexity for most of the essential skills. The text reading complexity scales are compatible with those used in the International Adult Literacy Survey, IELTS. However, in IELTS, level 4 and 5 were combined into one level. The occupations that we have chosen over the time to do are predominantly at the level 1 and 2. So when we write the curriculum, we write them at that level, depending on the skill level of the occupation in the profile. So for instance, clerical has a higher level, skill level for many of the tasks. So it's written at a slightly higher level than, for instance, the skilled trade helper would be. And the same with call center, PSW. Those that are requiring a little bit more skill level are going to be written at a slightly higher level. So moving on to step 3 of the process. Step 3 is the researching the content, and we both in the essential skills and in the information that we would be covering. So we ask ourselves, what will we include in these curriculum? So through the essential skills profile, we look at the task examples and see if we can manage to duplicate those for the learners. We look at employee and employer interviews. We ask them what tasks do they do, what skills are most required by them, and what background information would be valuable for a person moving into that job. Here's an example of a page from the numeracy section. All of our curriculum refer to examples of the tasks from the essential skills and from employer-employee interviews. So in this case, it tells the learner some of the tasks that a welder needs to use numeracy for. This allows the learner to see how what they're needing to learn applies in the workplace. Further to the step 3 process, we use workplace documents when possible. We often use real documents if we can manage to get them from an employer, but that's not always so easy. So we do reasonable facsimiles if that's not possible. In the workplace documents, we try to both explain how to use the documents and give them opportunities to both read and fill in documents. Oops, I think I missed one. So here's an example of a workplace document that's very common in many fields, and that's a supplier label for chemicals. Health and safety is one of the things that most of our curriculum have included because employers said that they find that's one of the most, leaves them open for the most danger and liability. So they like to have the learners know something about it before they come in, and it's often an area that our learners don't know a lot about. So this one you can see is giving some labels and showing them how to go about reading the document of the supplier label. Here's another document. This is an actual document from a Mrs. Clean cleaning company. We received permission to use all of the documents that are real before we put them in there. This is would be used as a reading sample, and they would have to ask questions about it to find out about content. So again, with step 3, the next thing we would look at is the required background skills or knowledge about the occupation that the learner would need to know. This is a title page from the apprenticeship curriculum. It shows you that we put in a section that does an overview of the field or occupation they will be going into. All of our occupations include something like this because it's near the beginning. The learner then can find out, is this really something that I want to be able to do? I know, for example, we have a lot of people that go through PSW and they get to the section where they find out they have to change diapers and clean up drop. So they say, no, that's not for me. So again, you can learn all the skills you need, but if it's not going to be an occupation that interests you, then there's no point. So we like to make sure the person knows what it's going to involve. Also, beneficial occupational information that's for the learner. So, how many of you know what a vernier caliper is? There, we've got a few, great. If you're in the skilled trades, if you're apprenticing, it's one of the tools that's very commonly used. So we try and use documents that will be applicable to them, but also teach them something. They are going to have to read diagrams in their job as an apprentice. They're going to have to use a caliper. So by combining the two and showing them how to read a document and explaining what it is, they learn how the skill while they're learning the information. For those leading occupations that are leading to further education, we also include study skills, presentation skills if necessary, and test taking. For instance, PSWs in college courses, they have to do presentations. So we build up how do you do a presentation and work through that. The apprentices will have to be going on to further training and tests, so we include test taking skills, note taking skills, things like that. And the last piece is web research of available materials. The web is an amazing resource. We can't make up everything ourselves when we include these. So we go and we search the web, we get permission to use things when we can, and find out more about what needs to be done and what other people are using as documents. This is going to be a sample activity from the internet for the clerical occupation. So if you can look at this, see if you can pick out some of the hazards that might be going on in this office. Standing on a wheelie stool. The kettle perched on top of the filing cabinet with the drawers open.